And welcome back. Let's do passage 5 called James Forten Revolutionary Sailmaker. So this is the passage you're going to rewrite. If it's been unclear, what I want you to do is start at James Forten Revolutionary Sailmaker and write this section, this paragraph and the following paragraphs. You don't have to write the questions out, but you do have to make the changes called for in the questions. So for instance, number 61, if it has you change it to any of these things, then you would replace the underlined version with either answer B, C, or D, depending on what we say the answer is. You would replace it. So you would go through the whole thing, replacing each underlined portion with what it needs to be replaced with based on what we talk about. Okay, let's start. James Forten, Revolutionary Sailmaker. I have been taken prisoner for the liberties of my country and never will prove a traitor to her interests. In quotes. So just based on context, we can probably guess that that's a quote from James Forten. And then, because it's got a little A after it, we can probably guess that at some point they're going to ask us to move it. I'm going to say, does this belong somewhere else? Anyway, moving on. Before entering a British-run prison during the American Revolution, prisoner of war James Forten said these words as a patriotic rejection. Oh, okay, no, he said these words, so they won't ask us to move it. They might ask us to insert something in point A. Prisoner of war James Forten said these words as a patriotic rejection of his British captor's offer to free him and educate him in England. Okay, so no change. Either we leave it or we change it to before entering a British-run prison during the American Revolution, comma, prisoner of war James Forten, another comma, revolution, comma, prisoner of war James Forten, no comma, during the American Revolution, prisoner of war. Okay, no, so let's talk about these options. Before entering a British-run prison during the American, let's look at D. During the American Revolution, prisoner of war. That would, without the comma after American Revolution, that would imply that prisoner of war and American Revolution were all part of the same phrase, and they're not. American Revolution is one phrase, prisoner of war is another phrase. So it cannot be D. Let's look at C. Before entering a British-run prison during the American Revolution. See, because of this before here, this before sets up a pause in the sentence. Before entering the war, before entering a British-run prison during the American Revolution, comma. Prisoner of war James Forten said these words. So we need a comma after revolution, so it's either B or C. And then the question is, do we need a comma after James Forten? Before entering a British-run prison during the American Revolution, prisoner of war James Forten said these words. I don't think we do, because if you put a comma after revolution and then a comma after Forten, then you're saying that the whole phrase prisoner of war James Forten is unnecessary to the sentence, and you can remove it and the sentence would still work. And that's not true. You need that whole phrase in there for the sentence to make sense. So we got to go with C, 61. 61 is C, because the comma following the introductory adverb, see, before is an adverb, so the adverb clause is before entering a British-run prison during the American Revolution. So you need a comma after the revolution, but you don't need one after prisoner of war, and you don't need one after James Forten. Okay. 62. Which of the following sentences, if added here, would provide the most logical transition from the preceding paragraph to this paragraph? Well, first off, let's see what this paragraph says. He knew his chances of surviving imprisonment were slim. Forten also knew that if released at the war's end or as part of an exchange, he, a free black man, might be captured and sold into slavery as he journeyed home to Philadelphia. Fortin not only survived, but became one of the most successful businessmen and ardent abolitionists in the United States. Real quick, abolitionist was someone who wanted to get rid of slavery. They wanted to abolish slavery. Okay, so Fortin was one of many to serve in the American Revolution. Maybe. Fortin's rejection was risky. Now that's something. He knew his chances of surviving imprisonment were slim, so that's a risk, right? Such an offer must have been unusual. Nah. Many would later admire Fortin's skills as an innovator, which has nothing to do with being a prisoner of war. So we gotta go with G. Fortin's rejection was risky because he knew his chances of surviving imprisonment were slim. So that's G, 62. 62 is G, because this choice best introduces the focus of the paragraph, which is on the risks Fortin faced by rejecting the British captor's offer and choosing to stay in the United States. Okay, 63. He knew his chance of surviving imprisonment were slim. The proper use is chances. I even read it that way without realizing that it was wrong. He knew his chances of surviving imprisonment. Chances to surviving? No. Chances of surviving. I'm not sure how to explain why that's the way, but like chances is a plural. It's always a plural when you use it this way. So it's 63 is C. Because the plural noun chances agrees in number with the plural verb were. Okay, there we go. And the choice correctly uses the preposition of in the idiomatic phrase chances of surviving. All right, back here. Fortin also knew that if released at the wars and or as part of exchange, he, a free black man, might be captured. Let's see. They have a semicolon, an M dash, and a period. It's definitely not a period because this leads in knew that if released at the war's end or as part of an exchange, he, yeah, that's if you put a period there, that turns that into a fragment. So it's got to be F, G, or H. And as we've discussed in earlier videos, this dash here has to be answered by another dash. If you do one dash, you have to do a second dash. And there's no second dash, so it's not H. So it's either no change or semicolon. A semicolon we would use if everything after it could be its own independent sentence. So let's look. He, a free black man, might be captured and sold into slavery as he journeyed home to Philadelphia. Okay, so the second half could work as a sentence, but the first half couldn't. For the first half would be a fragment. So it cannot be a semicolon. It has to be stay as it is. So F, no change. 64, the answer is F. A comma is required both following the dependent adverbial clause and following the noun he. Or that should be pronoun. The pronoun he, to separate the noun from its appositive, a free black man. Okay. Fortin not only survived, but became one of the most successful businessmen and ardent abolitionists in the United States. If the writer were to delete the preceding sentence, the paragraph would primarily lose. Okay, so Fortin not only survived, but became one of them. If we got rid of that sentence, a description of the tactics Fortin used to survive, no. A transition from a discussion of the ramifications of Fortin's decision to a discussion of his success, perhaps. A comparison between Fortin's work as a businessman and his role as an abolitionist, no, they're sort of lumped together. An analysis of how Fortin transitioned from a prisoner to a businessman. It's not an analysis, it's just a transition. So let's go with B. Let's go with B. 65, B. Yes, because the sentence demonstrates that Fortin did make the right choice despite the risks and became successful as a result. Without this sentence, the essay lacks a clear transition to paragraph 3. Paragraph 3. Fortin's rise to prosperity began upon his return home when a sailmaker hired him to design, mend, and sew sails. Fortin's knowledge of ships, gained from his experiences as a sailor during the war, paid off. He rose to the position of foreman, and in 1798, Fortin bought the sailmaker's business. He rose to the position of foreman. Let's exchange it with these others. He had arose to the position of foreman. Does not agree with the tense of the sentence before it, or even the rest of this sentence. Bought. He had rose. Again, that had changes the tense, and we don't want that. He raised to the position. Now, raised might almost make sense, except raise is a transitive verb, which means if he raised it, then he was raising something else. And the thing that was raised was him. He rose to the position. He was raised. So he rose to the position. So we're going to say no change. 66 is F. Yep, 66 is F, because the simple past tense rose is consistent with the verb tense in the rest of the paragraph. 67. Employing 38 workers, white and black, Fortin held his employees to a high standard. Employing 38 workers, whom were white and black. I think that's an unnecessary whom. I don't think whom works there. And then white and black it's good for the visualization of it and you understanding some specifics, but for the sake of the grammar of the sentence, you can remove white and black and the sentence still works. Right? So employing 38 workers, Fortin held his employees to a high standard, works as a sentence, which means you should offset it as with commas. So workers, comma, white and black, were good. I'm going to say no change. 67 is A. Good. Best answer is A because the A positive phrase white and black further describes the workers. Because it is non-restrictive, this phrase needs to be set off with commas. Okay, viewed as a professional academy, his business produced skilled apprentices who constructed sails for dozens of vessels. The bulk of Fortin's business records was probably lost after the business was sold. 68. The writer is considering deleting the preceding sentence. Should the sentence be kept or deleted? Okay, the bulk of Fortin's business records was probably lost after the business was sold. I thought that felt a little awkward, frankly. So I think it should be deleted. Let's see what their reasoning is behind the two deletions. Deleted because it blurs the paragraph's focus on the success of Fortin's business. I like that. Deleted because it contradicts the idea that Fortin had high expectations of his business. No, I mean, selling your business doesn't contradict the idea that you have high expectations for it. In fact, selling your business is usually a mark of success. You've built the business up to something that, somebody else wants to purchase. So I'm going to go with H. I didn't like it at first because it changed the topic. And if you change the topic, you should have a new paragraph. So let's say H. Is H because the focus of the paragraph is on how Fortin's sailmaking business became a success. The information about his lost business records is unrelated. Yep. Soon, many regarded Fortin as the city's premier sailmaker in Philadelphia. There's some redundancy there. The city in Philadelphia. So you can either get rid of cities or you can get rid of Philadelphia. Let's see what it is. Okay, no change. Soon, many regarded Fortin as the city's foremost leading sailmaker in his native Philadelphia. Foremost and leading is also redundant. We don't need it. Soon, many regarded Fortin as the city's premier sailmaker in the city of Philadelphia. You even said city twice. City, Philadelphia. It's too much redundancy. Regarded Fortin as the city's premier sailmaker. Bam. D. D is not redundant. D, because it is the most concise, least redundant choice. Perfect. So, remember, redundancy is bad. Redundancy is when you repeat something that's already been said. You don't need to repeat yourself. You just need to say it once to get your point across. A savvy businessman, Fortin supported abolitionist causes. When the War of 1812 closed the port of Philadelphia, Fortin used his profits in real estate and lending to support his sailmaking enterprise. Given that all the following choices are accurate, sorry, I'm jumping over to 70. Given that all the following choices are accurate, which one most effectively provides a transition into the next sentence of the essay? Okay. So, if we look at it, he's in the beginning of the sentence, he's a savvy businessman. And then in the other sentence, it's talking about how he kept the business afloat when the port closed. So, like, if you're a sailmaker and the port closes, you have no business, right? Nobody's buying your sails because the port is closed. So you've got to make money somehow. So this abolitionist causes thing, while an important part of his biography, doesn't belong right there where it is. So, a savvy businessman, Fortin had fought for his country in the Revolutionary War. Has nothing to do with his business acumen. A savvy businessman, Fortin donated to such places as schools and hospitals. That's a good thing to know about him, but it doesn't belong here. A savvy businessman, Fortin maintained his business during difficult times. There we go. When the War of 1812 closed the port. So, J. J's your best bet. 70. Best answer is J because the paragraph provides two examples of him overcoming hardships. Right? So that's one of those where if you read ahead, it tells you the answer. When the need for smaller, quicker vessels changed sail design, he adapted. Okay, so 71. When the need for smaller, quicker vessels. Smaller and more quicker? No. Smaller, more quicker? No. So it's either leave it as it is or get rid of the comma. Do we want to get rid of the comma? When the need for smaller, quicker vessels changed sail design, he adapted. I like the comma, but I usually use too many commas when I write. So let's guess 71 is D. Oh man, it was A, no change. Man, I should have followed my instincts. Best answer is A because the coordinate adjectives smaller and quicker both modify the noun vessels, and therefore a comma is needed to separate the two adjectives. Okay. One thing Fortin refused to do, however, was fit a slave ship with sails. In fact, historians estimate that the sailmaker invested over greater than half his fortune. That's an awkward phrase. We're going to need to replace that. Over greater. See that? It just sounds weird. Over greater than half his fortune in work to abolish slavery. Okay, so no change? No, I want to change it. Over more than half of his own fortune. Over more than half. See, over and more, that's redundant. Invested more than over half. Nope. More than over, more and over makes it redundant. Invested over half of his fortune. There we go. J. 72 is J. 72 is J because the phrase over is the clearest and most concise. In fact, historians estimate the sailmaker invested over half of his fortune in work to abolish slavery. One of the wealthiest men in Philadelphia, Fortin helped finance The Liberator, a powerful abolitionist newspaper. The Revolutionary War veteran who served in this war. That's a redundant phrase. We don't need that. Telling us that he's a veteran told us that he served in the war. So we don't need the phrase who served in this war. So look at that. D just gets rid of that phrase. The Revolutionary War veteran believed that the United States owed all residents the right to freedom. Yeah, we're just going to go with D. 73 is D. Because it is the most logical and concise choice to conclude the essay. Okay. Question 74 and 75 ask about the passage as a whole. The writer is considering adding the following true statement to the essay. Writing under a pen name, Forden himself submitted numerous articles and letters calling for the end of slavery. If the writer were to add this sentence to the essay, it would most logically be placed at. Okay, so, writing under a pen name, if he submitted articles and letters, where did he submit them? Right? He had to submit them to a newspaper. And the newspaper isn't mentioned until here. So it's either C or D. Right? C, D. A powerful abolitionist newspaper. Writing under a pen name, Forden, so I'm going to say after D, point D in paragraph 6. Boom. J. 74 is J. Best answer is J because the information about the articles Forden submitted under a pen name makes logical sense only if placed after the sentence that introduces him financing the newspaper, The Liberator. Suppose the writer's primary purpose has been to describe in detail the daily operations of a successful business in the newly formed United States. Would this essay accomplish that purpose? Okay, so it's asking about daily operations. Not once in that essay did they mention the daily operations, like who was in charge, who bought the sale material, who sewed it, who shipped it, who didn't, whatever. So it's going to be one of the no's. C or D. No, because it focuses more on Forden as a patriot, businessman, and abolitionist than on the daily workings of his business. I like that. No, because it focuses primarily on contrasting Forden's work as an abolitionist with his work as a sailmaker. It didn't contrast them, right? To contrast is to show the difference between two things. And his work as a sailmaker helped him be an abolitionist because it gave him the money to start the Liberator newspaper. So we're going to have to go with C. 75 is C. 75 is C because the focus of the essay is on Forden and the significant role he played, not on the more specific daily operations of his successful business. All right, that does it for English. I will meet you next time to talk about math. Have a good day.